Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the podcast, episode 94 of the Hot Pole Studios podcast. This is going very, very fast. I'm your host, Adam Steele, and joining me as always is Mr. Liam Wright. Hello.
Hello. Hello.
This is our weekly podcast where we talk about music, tech news, and guitar news, and general mixing and guitar and rock and metal production advice. So, what's happened in the news this week? In brief, the 1176 is now a Buss Compressor. There are lots of new guitars. Motu have got some new stuff. And there is something big and synthy in a Behringer corner. Let's roll that intro. There we go. Yes, hello everybody. Make yourselves at home, grab a drink, get some popcorn. Oh, what a week it has been. Although it feels like I've not done very much this week. I have definitely done a lot this week, if you know what I mean.
Yep.
Yeah.
Know that feeling.
Yeah. One thing that I can show you is this time last week, I was finishing the Celestian video, and this is the screen on the other computer, because I now have two computers here. This is the screen on the other computer. That is Adobe Media Encoder. For anyone who doesn't know what that is, that's kind of the rendering bit of Premiere. And that is the last piece of the Celestian video rendering out, and it's only taken, what, a week? Oh boy. So
Wow.
I've got a new editing computer in here, which the long-term plan is to shift all the streaming stuff from this laptop that I've always used over there. So hopefully by next week that'll be done. But for this week I've just used the laptop because it's simple, it's set up, it's ready. And yeah, I've been through the mill with trying to render this flipping Celestian video. Oh boy. So I put a processor in that was kind of randomly crashing in the middle of the night.
Fun.
Yeah. Then it was
several hours into doing the edit as well.
Yeah, like 8 hours in, 9 hours in, it would just kind of... And it wasn't even a blue screen as such, it'd just dump out.
See, I was doing some rendering about 10 days ago, and the render took about 8 minutes, and it kept crashing 6 minutes into it, and that wound me up. So...
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, when it happens after 8 hours, you've lost a night. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, that happened. Then I decided to try different methods to try and get it to work. That took a few days. Not constant few days, just something I want to be finished, you know. And so I've changed all sorts. Now I've got the whole project on an external drive, because apparently the SATA, the serial ATA ports on this motherboard were hanging, or it's the SSD maybe. I put a different processor in. That's not crashed since. Oh boy. So also, I'll just show you the screen again. I've decided to edit this and render it in 5 different reels now, rather than one big thing. And it's not in H.264 anymore. It's in Apple ProRes, which is a huge file, which I had to clear out 1 terabyte of space on a hard drive just to do that. But it takes another thing out of the equation that makes it easier. But it's a blessing in disguise, because it turns out that not only were there a couple of errors in the final render... Oh, that's right. So I was in the studio a few days ago, and I took my laptop with me, which had done the render, because I thought, screw this, I'll put it on the laptop. And rendered out, and there were some errors in it. So I went nuclear. There was this thing with warp stabilization, which, stops jittering. And I was using it as a luxury, because there were a few shots where there was a slight pan, and it would just have a tiny little... Nothing that anybody would notice apart from me. And that was causing a problem, so I just got rid of that. And it turned it down from a 42-hour render to a 16-hour render.
That's a big jump.
That is a big jump. So it turns out that was kind of the culprit. But then it was a blessing in disguise, because I don't know if you remember, Liam, but earlier in the week, you and me talked about likes, and that being important, more important now than it's ever been on YouTube. And I noticed that I hadn't really put anything in the video about likes.
Right.
So it gave me a good opportunity to go back in and put in a little animation and some text at kind of 30-minute-ish intervals.
Yeah.
Saying please like and subscribe in different funny ways that would make people maybe press it. Because I figured, if someone does see it over and over again, they're the rare person who's going to watch the whole video. Most people are going to skip through. So at least now there's a chance of them seeing that. So I thought, you know what? Blessing in disguise. Cool.
And on that point, if you haven't pressed that like button yet, that is the only cost for watching this free stream.
Yes.
But it is compulsory. So make sure you like, otherwise you'll get thrown out. We'll send Marty round.
Yes, Marty will throw you into the sea.
So make sure you pay your admission fee, 1 like. That's all it is. That's all we ask.
Yes.
And we'll all go about our day.
Awesome. Very much appreciated. Everybody hit that like button. How's your week been?
It's not appreciated. It's required. It's now. I've made sure. It's now the cost.
Likes
it's the
are
ticket
mandatory.
cost. Yeah, but compulsory.
300 views, 300 likes.
Yep.
Likes or get out. Oh man. The other thing that's been, there's been a lot of stuff happening recently where it's like, oh, I can't tell you about it on the podcast. And I feel like such an idiot saying that, but it is what it is. We've been spending the last few days in hell of contract negotiations. I can't say about what. Obvious reasons. Obvious reasons. I mean, if ever there was a thing you can't talk about, it's contracts that haven't been finished. But there's exciting stuff coming up that involves me and the channel, and that's about all I can say, which is the most excruciating thing, but that's where I'm at.
Depending on the contract negotiations, I don't know why you mentioned it, because you may not be able to mention it even once they're done.
Yeah.
So you may all never know, but we'll see. Just like between me and you, just really quickly, I've got a call at 10 a.m. about that, so I'll get back to you afterwards.
Lovely. Thank you. Yes. So, interesting things are happening, or not. You'll never know. What else have I done this week? I mean, I've been all round everywhere doing things and seeing things. Oh, God.
I've had a week off.
It's all right for some, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's been amazing. Well, it says, but then I've ended up having to do work anyway some days, which has been frustrating. So I'm going to go back to work later as a result. But, first time off in a long time since like New Year's Eve, I think. It still feels like January, but it's not.
No,
at
it's
all.
really not. Yeah.
It's been a long time since I've had any time off at all. So Ash was like, "There's 2 bank holidays. If we're taking it off, and then we're technically only off for 4 business days." I was like, "That's pretty smart, actually."
Yeah,
we get
that
10
is
days
pretty smart. I worked for far too long in the restaurant industry. Bank holidays are like, that's when you're programmed to do more work. Oh boy. But yes.
Yeah, it's been interesting.
Yeah, it looks like there's been some interesting news as well. Oh, one thing that I can definitely tell you is that I spent some time this week putting a new rack system in the studio with lots of rack gear.
Looks really good.
Yeah, it does. I'll see if I can find you all a picture before the end of the podcast. But not just yet, because it's probably about time to talk about the news.
The
news. Press the button. There we go, press the button. So the first news article is kind of relevant to me because of this rack that I was talking about, and that is that I just got 2 1176s in hardware, and you can stereo link them. But High Voltage Audio is a company that I've just started making an 1176 that's designed to be used as a bus compressor. What is going on? I mean, that's really cool. A bus compressor, for anyone who doesn't know, is kind of when your mix is kind of done, you send it through that, not to limit it and smash it, but to kind of hold everything together and give it some glue. And generally, 1176s aren't used for that because they're usually far too aggressive and they'd make everything sound kind of weird. But these guys have tweaked the design into something far more modern and far more clever. Looks very interesting. First thing,
it does look interesting.
Usually 1176s are 2 rack units tall. So if you wanted a stereo pair, that's 4 rack units. That's a lot. And these guys have shrunk this down into a single rack unit, which is a very nice start. Also, usually the 1176 is such an aggressive compressor. It starts at 4:1, which is a pretty aggressive compression ratio, where this one starts at 2:1. Which is really nice. Mine also start at 2:1, but mine were user made. Mine have actually been modified and made by hand so they can do that. And I'm probably going to use mine on a master bus at some point just to see what it's like. It's also got a sidechain high pass, which is really useful for this kind of thing, because it means that super low subby stuff doesn't suddenly make the mix just kind of disappear. And a wet dry mix, which is really useful for bus compression because it means you can smack it that bit harder, and the mix doesn't just go wop 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 and do that thing that makes me feel seasick. Yeah, but it's all there. And the really nice thing is there's a choice on the output of either solid state electronically balanced output, which means like super clean output, or transformer balanced tube gain stage. So this has got a tube output as well, just to make it that much more awesome. So yeah, tube 1176 that you can use as a bus compressor. That sounds pretty good to me. Now, I know that one of the biggest engineers, well, most successful engineers, not physically largest, in the world is a guy called Andrew Sheps. You may have seen him. His hair's kind of thinning, and then he's got this big white kind of mane and a big long beard and glasses. Very nice American chap who lives in England and has won lots of Grammys. And he has always got 1176s going on his master output in parallel. And he is known for having this big, exciting, louder than, not just louder, but larger than life kind of aggressive sound on his mixes. And this could be a very easy way to get you there. So yeah. And interesting indeed. The cost on one of these, you ask? Roughly $1,600, which sounds like a lot, but actually one single 1176 kind of standard one might cost you $900 or $1,000. So getting two of them for less with all these funky extra features sounds really cool. And also, of course, you'll be able to use it not as a bus compressor as well. You'll be able to turn off the stereo link and use each one separately and use like basically a Valve 1176. Yeah, if I hadn't just bought two 1176s, I would probably be looking at one of these, honestly, because that's really nice.
That is cool. I like that.
Looks classy as well. Doesn't have the big needles, which I would have quite liked that. In fact, I would have been happy for it to be twice the size just to have the big needles on, but that's just luxury, really. Anyway, moving on. I'm looking at getting into 500 series gear, and at some point soon, I should have a 500 series rack appear in the studio.
Oh.
Yes, I finally decided to order one of those Midas ones, which are relatively affordable. But all it really is XLR in and outs and a power supply, and you supply the interesting things that go in it. And so, yeah, that's supposed to be on the way at some point soon, at the same time as new patch bays. We're getting patch bays finally, which is going to be interesting talking about that and linking from the old video where I said patch bays are pointless in the home studio. Because I did say in the home studio, and a lot of people seem to miss that in their angry YouTube comments. They're like, oh, but I've got 15 million keyboards and I need patch bays, therefore you're wrong. And it's like, hang on. You're telling me that you're a niche case and somehow that validates your opinion? Okay. Yeah. Anyway, this is a 500 series unit that looks very cool. This is SSL's ultra modern analog EQ module. This is the UV EQ, which looks really nice. So they call it the UV EQ because the old SSL EQs, they had different colors on their different frequency bands. So black was bass, or sometimes brown was bass. Then you got your blue and your green for your mids, and then you get kind of a pinkish or maybe a red, depending on the desk model, for the high frequencies. And now this one's got let's see if I can make that bigger. Yeah, there we go. A purple, or as they've called it, UV knob. Oh no, that's low frequency. So that's 30 hertz or up to 90 hertz. So that's super low, not super high. I do apologize. But yeah, the fact that goes that low, that is way lower than the original SSL EQs. Aceman says, can you actually get the Midas 500 chassis again? Don't know. Ordered it from Tom about 2 weeks ago and it's still not here yet, so we'll see. If they turn around and say they haven't got any, then at least they'll give me my money back, so we'll see. But that'll be one of those things that was probably stuck on a boat waiting to get to where it was supposed to go with everything that happened in the last few weeks. So, yeah, there you go. But yes, SSL they've started making these really cheap interfaces, which I'm not a big fan of, but they have always made high-end separates as well. And I've always given them the respect for the high-end gear that they make. Although often it wasn't necessarily the things that I wanted. I'm leaning more and more towards SSL these days. I'm finding that their gear does things that I like. And
really? Like what?
Like their EQs. If you watch any of the mix streams, that's one thing I did this week. I did a new mix stream on the new computer. I am moving slowly away from using more Neve EQs, which have that big, warm, round, woolly, easy to use thing, and going more towards SSL's EQs, which sound a lot more precise. And I think as my ability kind of gets sharpened and improves over time with me doing more work, I think I'm looking for more precise tools. I think that might be what it is.
Right.
But also you turn up the high end on some of the SSL stuff, and instead of becoming a big screech, it just kind of opens up, which is something I like. Yeah, but there you go. There's also this 6CH, which is looks like a full channel strip with basic high and low frequency. Probably an SSL preamp channel strip. They call it a channel strip when it's a bit of everything. Yeah, channel strip, super analog processing. So it's the mic preamp, low and high frequency EQs, and single knob compressor. And I have to say that in my mixes recently, I've been using the SSL desk compressors quite a lot because they are that easy to use. And yeah, I mean, quite often I'll still use 1176s and all the other stuff that I still use. But I can easily use this compressor here as just kind of a bit of a catch-all. So if there's just a random stray volume jump somewhere on a channel, it's caught before I have to go and look for it. You know, it doesn't have to be the aggressive thing like an 1176 unless that's what I want, which quite often is what I want. But they can work together as a team. And one of the reasons that an SSL desk was always so expensive is that every channel has this compressor and a gate as well as an EQ, which at the time was just unheard of. And I mean, yeah, my big thing now is that I've been using the Brainworks SSL 9000 channel strip, which, if you remember the time that we went to Real World Studios down in Box, in Wiltshire, Peter Gabriel's studio, they had a 9000 series desk, which was the 9000K, and that just sounded amazing. It had this clarity that you just couldn't explain it. It just was. And it turns out that now Brainworks are doing that, and it turns out that I like that. So, yeah, I let myself change from what I was kind of my mental template to just, I'll give this a go. And 2 mixes later, I was like, yeah, I like that. Not going back now. So, yeah, there you go. But yeah, the UVEQ looks like it's $1,300, so that is not cheap. That is a serious EQ right there.
No.
But
that's not cheap.
The channel strip is more like $400 or £279, which is still a fair chunk of money for a single channel. But if we're talking you want like top grade preamp plus high and low frequency and some simple compression on every channel in a small studio, or even just an option that's in the SSL option in your studio, then I think you could do worse than that. That's not bad at all.
No, I like it.
So there you go. SSL preamps that are affordable, have inbuilt goodness, and you can get them for not too much money. Onward.
Seems legit.
Yeah. Now here's one that caught me. I am known as kind of mainly an Audient guy, as I can just wave Audient interfaces at you. I've got at least 3 in this room. But yeah, Motu. I actually have a Motu box on the desk as well. He says making lots of noise. This is my old Motu MIDI timepiece. This is just an oversized MIDI box, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
Yeah. But I've been using it with this MIDI keyboard that I've got on my left, just in case I need to bash any chords in. I didn't really want to take an 88-note keyboard home because it literally wouldn't fit in this space here. That's by the by. Motu for audio have always kind of been very heavily Mac is what they do. And that's fine. That's just how it is. And, but I think as time goes on, from what I've heard, Motu are becoming more and more Windows friendly as they have realized that a large part of their user base is making the jump away from Mac. And so the Ultralight Mark V is their new USB interface, and that's got some major upgrades. It's got a really nice OLED screen on there, which looks like it tells you a lot of stuff at a quick glance, which is really useful when you are wanting to make sure all your levels are right and don't want to pull up yet another app. Like as much as I love the Audient ID14 Mark II, which I have here, it's got this ID app where I can see all the mixer stuff, which is great. I'd like to see that in hardware. That would cost more money, and I get that. But this is what you pay for. This is what you get with the Motu option. Whether their mic pre's are as clean when they get as loud, I don't know. But it looks like they've got a big upgrade. And look at the number of ports on it. So it's for a small interface, it's pretty versatile by the look of it. But it looks like you'd need to be plugging in like either keyboards or separate preamps there. It's got 10 outputs. I've no idea what I'd need more outputs than inputs for these days.
No.
It's also got optical and SPDIF if they run concurrently. That's always nice. And it's always nice to see MIDI. I see a lot of people still saying if an interface doesn't have MIDI, I won't buy it. And I'm like, really? Do you live in 1987?
You mean actually like MIDI cables?
Yeah, like MIDI ports.
MIDI over USB.
Yeah. Well, even so, like, I mean, yes, I've got this Motu monster, which has got more MIDI ports on the back than anything. But you can get a cheap one that's got one in, one out for like $20. And it will perfectly work alongside the interface you have, because MIDI is separate from audio. Always has been. Yeah. So yeah, another Anon in chat says he's had pretty bad experiences with Motu drivers on Windows 10. Yeah, I mean, that historically is how Motu have been with Windows, and I'm not going to sugarcoat that. Historically, that is definitely my experience too. But from what I have heard, they are making considerable efforts to try and catch up on the Windows side, because, yeah, like I said, their market base is there. Looks like the converters can do 125 dB dynamic range, which is really impressive. I do find that numbers for converters don't mean a great deal if the circuit around them is rubbish. That's not to say the circuit is rubbish, but it's worth keeping that in mind. It's like if I get a really finely tuned instrument and then stick it in a room that's full of noise, it's going to pick up a load of noise. It's that. It's Apogee used to and still do make these wonderful preamps and converters that would cost a lot of money, and the chips in them were no different than what everybody else was using, but you'd put an extra zero on the end of the price for Apogee stuff because it just sounded incredible. And this is in the late 90s, early 2000s, when the difference in performance between one piece of gear and the next was that one you could hear a snowstorm and the other you couldn't. We're talking genuinely that bad. But yeah, at this point, it's more down to the preamp than it is the converters, I think. But that's a conversation for a whole different video. And breathe. Right, so this thing works through high-speed USB-C, compatible with USB 2 and 3, which means it's USB 2. And you will need a lightning adapter for use with iPhones and non-Pro iPads. So it works with them. It's class compliant. That's good. As well as USB-C to Type A adapter if your computer lacks Type-C ports. I really hope they bundle that in because those USB-C to USB-A cables, Samsung ship them with their phones and it must cost them about 28 cents. It's not a hard thing for a company to do. Check the ninth. Apparently, it's got a 2.4 millisecond round trip latency at 96 kilohertz 32 sample buffer. I thank you, Marty, for pointing that out in chat. I highly doubt that will last. That's as far as USB goes. That is ridiculously low. Because USB has other things involved in it. The reason that USB has extra latency usually is not because of the interface's fault, but because USB kind of works like a train system where there are different stops that it has to stop at. And yeah, the way that RME get around that and have really low latency is that they have not only written completely their own drivers for everything, which must cost them a lot of time and money in R&D, but also they have chips in their interfaces called FPGAs, which RME, that's one of the reasons why their interfaces are so expensive, is that their main processor in their interfaces can literally be hardware rewritten by an update. You know about FPGAs?
No.
Field Programmable Gate Array. Or grid array. I can't remember which one. But an FPGA, literally with a firmware update, you can actually change that CPU, how it works.
Oh, yeah. Something else had that in. I feel like it was something to do with MIDI Wi-Fi cards, maybe?
Might be, yeah. There's a few things that have got FPGAs on. There's big ones, small ones. There's a whole range of FPGAs. Let me think. Xilinx make a lot of FPGAs. I think they just got bought by AMD or Intel. I think Intel just bought Xilinx.
I feel like it was when we were talking about the Wi-Fi MIDI adapters a while back.
Xilinx acquisition. Who bought them? AMD. Yeah, AMD bought Xilinx, which is a big thing in tech because, like I say, an FPGA, they're usually more expensive to make because you can actually, like I say, change the processor just by a system update, which is bonkers when you think about it, but that is actually what they do, but that's why they're more expensive. That's why, I used to have an RME Babyface interface as a good example. That had an FPGA in it, and originally that didn't work with things like iPads and iPhones because back in the day when they were made, class compliant wasn't really a thing. RME sent out an update that completely rewrote the processor on the Babyface. So now that you held down two buttons while you turned it on, and it turned on in a class compliant mode and completely changed its CPU around.
Mm-hmm.
But
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's insane. And that's why RME, getting back to the original point, could have incredibly good low latency performance with their USB interfaces because they didn't buy a USB interface chip from any manufacturer. They literally reprogrammed a part of their own processor on the interfaces to be the most ridiculously low latency, high stability USB connector, and wrote their own drivers for Windows, Mac, and Linux to talk to that and basically ignore the USB standard and just go round it and just essentially go behind the USB bus's back. And yeah, unless Motu have gone ahead and done that themselves, which is possible, but I'm not holding my breath. Unless they've done that, there's really no chance that that's going to be something you can stick with. Like 32 sample buffer size is incredibly low, and you might get away with recording 1 or 2 tracks in doing that. But once you start putting effects on, that's going to crumble quickly. Because
it was Xilinx, you said, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not actually gone through yet.
Okay.
They voted for it 2 days ago, so the vote went through. So it looks like it's going through.
Right.
But they haven't quite sealed the deal yet.
Has it got to go through like regulators and things?
It just needs to go because it's AMD a public company, so it needs to go through the board and be voted on and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
The Xilinx team is one of the strongest in the industry, and we are thrilled to be joining AMD, said Victor Peng, the Xilinx president and CEO. Our shared culture of innovation and excellence and collaboration will enable us to accelerate growth in the data center and pursue a broader customer base across more markets as a combined company.
Yeah. So the thing that gets me excited about AMD buying Xilinx is, Xilinx, I think it is. I don't know how you pronounce it.
Yeah, whatever.
Is that,
I got it wrong.
Yeah, I don't know either. It's now possible when this all goes through that they could integrate a Xilinx like chiplet onto any AMD processor, graphics or CPU, whatever, and literally by a software update change its entire way of working. So if there were like that, one of the problems with processors now is speed or no speed. Forget speed for a minute. When new features come out for hardware like processors, you can't just transplant them onto the old ones. Whereas if you've got a chip on there that can literally be rewritten, you can add new features.
You know how I would do it? I would do with that. I mean, AMD have said they're already not going to do this in any way anyway, so it won't be. I would have it so that you've got to pay a fee to be able to mine crypto with your graphics card. So you've got to get it unlocked, and it's either like a one-off like big fee or a monthly fee that you pay based on like the Bitcoin Premium or something like that.
Interesting.
That would be very sneaky, and that would make a lot. That could be very good.
That would take 3.5 days to be hacked and flashed, but yes.
I think that's how long it did take. Oh, did you hear that NVIDIA...
The unhackable driver, yeah.
Well, yeah, NVIDIA released a beta driver that they forgot to put the thing in. So now people just download those drivers, and now the 3060s can like mine Ethereum again. It's like, well done. Yep. Like someone literally forgot to pack the bag properly when they put those drivers out.
It's typical. So NVIDIA, for anyone who didn't know, were saying like, well, we've got this new graphics card, the 3060, and if you try and mine on it, we will cripple that mining speed so that miners won't buy it, and so that hopefully gamers can buy one. And within a week, somebody had found that, like Liam said, that there was, you just go back to the old drivers. And
it was actually new drivers that they brought out. One of the beta drivers for a new driver didn't include the BIOS link stopped you from doing it. Yeah, that's what I mean. It's not like an old driver. It's literally what the newer driver that was put out didn't have the software on. The only other way to get around it required you to kind of flash your BIOS and stuff, which like I think the other way still would have put most people off because it was a bit dangerous, really, if you messed it up, sort of thing. But I don't know. Like I'm for something. Like I think gamers need video editors. Like the way that crypto's going, like no one's going to be able to get hold of a computer anymore. Because they've already said that like theoretically, it actually makes no sense for Nvidia or AMD to actually sell their graphics cards anymore. Like, they will make more money by just mining with them, at least for the foreseeable future. Given that obviously the more miners there are, the higher the difficulty, therefore the less you make out of it. But there's also a load of other coins out there that you can mine. Like Raven coin is almost as profitable as Ethereum now. So
Yes, it is. And I've got
so
500 Raven coin tucked away somewhere. I need to find them.
oh, do you?
Yeah. Because I was in
do.
near the start because I was mining a thing called Pigeon Coin because I thought that was funny and it was related to Raven Coin, and so I ended up mining that one instead. Yeah,
I've got some Raven coin. Raven coin is currently at 18 cents.
yeah.
So
yeah,
that's a few
I'm rich. Or not?
Yeah, I've got 1,200 Raven coin
Oh,
in part of my portfolio.
oh right,
Yeah.
okay. Is that from
Yeah,
investing
it's
or
just
from mining? Is that from mining it or was that?
no, yeah. It's part of my altcoin portfolio. I've got like bits and bobs in pretty much everything.
All
That's so yeah. I've got about 50 different altcoins now.
right.
I think so.
Cool.
It's fun. But yeah, I do think like going back onto the computing part of it, like yeah, something needs to be done for it. I don't know what the answer is, but something like this could theoretically be part of a solution. It's like charge people a premium. That means that it's still like that you have to do something to unlock them. I don't know, like, and then you can make it that you've got to buy them and declare what you're buying them for, like, and therefore, like, they charge more for them. Like, you've got to get the mining license, so that you know how many sort of companies are buying them, rather than like I've got no issue. Like, it's weird. It's like sort of thing. Like, it's a bit like the rental market. Like, private landlords have got one or two properties aren't ruining the country, but the companies that buy every single house, so there's no houses available for anyone, means that no one can get on the property ladder. So like you need to find that sort of balance. So like mining at home, like with my little 4 graphics card rig, I'm not stopping anyone from getting hold of a graphics card, but like you must have seen it on Facebook, the amount of people that have bought like 1,000 3090s and stuff like that.
Oh god, yeah. It's dizzying to think about, but yeah, it's what happens.
So yeah, you're right. Really interesting, that technology, and a bit of a coup, really.
Yes,
for AMD.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing that going forward will really help them, I think, because integrating technologies like that is a big plus. Like the way that really high powered audio gear, as a good example, has worked for forever is that it doesn't use traditional CPUs. It uses DSP chips, which are specifically programmed. They're ASICs, which are kind of like FPGAs, but you can't reprogram them once they're made. Where they do a thing and they do it well, and because they don't have to do a million other things, they can just focus on doing the thing really well. And so, like, if you had even like a Xilinx FPGA on something like an AMD chip, you could flash that to be anything, and it becomes essentially a modular CPU. You could have an advanced audio chip on there, or you could switch it to be more of a video DSP chip or whatever. And it wouldn't cost them any more to produce, because one of the things that, as we know, that in tech, one of the things that costs the most to make is lots of different SKUs, lots of different types of a thing. If you can make one type of a thing and ship it, and then press a button and it changes to what it's needed, the possibilities start to make your brain hurt.
Indeed. Hello, Chris and Nick.
Hello, everybody.
And everyone else in chat.
Yeah, welcome.
Did you also know that for the first time in 10 years, Dell has launched an AMD Alienware laptop?
Oh, thank goodness
Apparently,
for that.
AMD haven't been in Alienware for over 10 years.
So now AMD also get warranties put on there that you didn't ask for. Yay!
It's got the Ryzen 5000 H series processor.
Oh yeah, so it's a laptop.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, The H series is, that's their laptop stuff. But Ryzen is so good.
Yeah.
My editing PC now is using a 5800X. I've never had a machine so fast. It's ridiculous. It just flies. It's brilliant. And yeah, well impressed. I wanted a 5900X, but you just can't find them. But the 5800X is just, it screams along, and that's what you want. Yeah, apparently Intel's new 11th gen just came out. Was it 11th or 12th gen just came out? And it just isn't as good. They're losing the game, which makes me very, very happy. Yeah, all right.
Team AMD now.
I am. I always wanted to be Team AMD, but the older stuff was just a bit rubbish.
I mean, I'm the same, but it's like I was definitely the case. Like 16 years ago, like definitely Team AMD, and then it's been almost 2 decades of Intel that I kind of I feel like it's cheating now.
Yeah. Well, the first 2 EPs that I ever properly produced were on an AMD Phenom 6-core processor. That was a monster. In fact, I believe that became the first hot pulp. It was the first Banter Media audio machine. So that thing served as well. It was getting on a little by that point, but yeah, I mean,
I think my first big, powerful machine was the one that I edited my first feature film on, and that one is still downstairs in that big rig as well. I'm pretty sure that's what's in there.
Yeah.
Old first gen 4-core, quad-core AMD.
Yeah. Old heat generating hunk of junks they were.
Yeah.
But there you
Great
go.
at the time though.
Yeah. If you want a Motu Ultra Light,
edit HD video on it.
with an extra card added in.
With an extra card in it, yeah.
Because, of course, NVIDIA and AMD graphics acceleration for video wasn't a thing then. That only came in later. Yeah.
Yeah.
We could talk about that for hours, but let's get through the news. Yeah. Ultralight Motu, expensive, €750. But if that's what you want, go get one. Thanks. Next. Now, here's something that most of our viewers will appreciate is free stuff.
Ooh.
So with Amplitude 5, which is pretty cool, you can now get the Amplitude Mesa triple rectifier, which is chug, 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 fizz, 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 angry, angry, for free. So, yes, the offer is valid with a new series of presets until May 2nd. So you've got a few weeks to go and get this if you see this podcast a little later. But yeah, go get that. It's not my favourite rectifier, but if you want a stiff, angry, brutal sound, the triple rec is the way to go. In fact, my favourite album that has a triple rec on it is one you might not expect. It's Coheed and Cambria's Keeping Secrets of Silent Earth.
All right.
That's all triple rectifier. It's a very stiff, very angry distortion sound on that album, and it's that amp. If you listen really closely, there's a lot of like pinch harmonics and a lot of jug 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 on that album, and it's that. Yeah. So there you go. 150 watt monster. The only other 150 watt monster that Mesa have made is that, the Road King. And I got one, and it's so good in 150 watt mode. It makes the yeah. I only managed to actually play it through speakers at 150 watts once, and I had to stop and go and lie down. Ultra fundable indeed. Yeah, so there you go. The Amplitude custom shop is always there. The Amplitude stuff is pretty good. I'm intending on making a video about that soon because they did give me an NFR key to check it out, so that is coming soon. As everybody knows, I've been trying to get this flipping other video out for weeks now, but that's so close on the verge to being out that I'm now gearing up for the next set of videos and clearing the backlog and getting everything out. So that's going to be good. But yes, go get it. Amplitude, Mesa, free. Do it. If you can hear Ivy, if you can hear Ivy in the background, she is not sleeping.
I can't.
That's good. I can hear her having a full-on conversation with herself. So this is something that I really like the look of. There's a new Ernie Ball Music Man St. Vincent set of signature guitars, the Goldies. And these are very pretty. I mean, I love this burgundy colour. There are certain key upgrades. These pickups, they're not just gold because of their appearance. They're what are called gold foil pickups, which have an incredibly clear sound. It's a very vintage way of doing things. Yeah, there you go. Look at that. That's actually part of the pickup.
Ooh.
So yeah, gold foil humbuckers. So a proper vintage sound out of them. Brass saddles, which will give it a proper warm sound. Rosewood fretboards. Roasted figured maple necks. Reverse headstock as well, which I know a lot of people like. It's not something that I'm particularly fussed about with a 4 and 2. But yeah, she's dyed her hair blonde now and looks like something out of the Golden Girls, I guess. But there you go. $3,000 for one of these, but they are handmade in the Ernie Ball factory. These are not churned out. These are proper made in US stuff. But yeah, if you want a classy guitar, and apparently because these are quite a thin body, even though they're quite long, if you've got an awkward body shape, then these will fit you quite nicely. It doesn't bother me because even though I'm only kind of average height, I've got quite a tall body. So for me, tall guitars are not really an issue. But if you've got either a short body or just some other reason like short arms, actually I've got short arms, but if you like guitars that are ergonomic and fit you quite nicely, then this may be something that's worth looking at because it's very cleverly designed. There we go. So yeah. And from that to roughly at the same price point, something that's going from classy to absolutely battered. This is the new Joe Bonamassa's Fender custom shop, the Bludgeon.
Right.
Oh, actually, no, sorry. It's not the same price. It's way more.
This one of them distressed ones again.
Yes. But I don't know. This is where the conversation gets interesting on the whole distressed thing, because I think regular viewers will know I'm not a massive fan of distressed guitars. But this they've done with a goal, and that I understand. The goal of this was to make it exactly like another guitar that already exists, which is Joe Bonamassa's actual one. So yeah, I get that. I mean, if it's relicking for the sake of relicking, I absolutely don't get it. But if it's relicking that's at least got a reason, okay, still not my thing, but I get it. And yeah, I mean the original, they call it the no-caster because they didn't even put like broadcaster or Telecaster on the headstock at the time. It just said Fender. And yeah, big bright orange inside of the case. Ooh.
This isn't the only no-caster, is that? I've heard that name before.
No, it's not the only one. Any Telecaster made before a certain point, I think they call them no-casters.
Right.
Because there was no such name, and then they called them the broadcaster, and then they found out they weren't allowed to, so they took the names off. I think that's to do with why it became a no-caster for a while until the name Telecaster eventually stuck.
Right.
Well, that was a few months later or a year later. It was, I don't know. But there was a certain point when it became a Telecaster. Before that, it wasn't. It was either an Esquire, a broadcaster, or some of them were no-casters. Other people know the details of that far better than I do, so I'm not going to claim that I'm the authority on that. Hey. But yeah, this is the first. I mean, Bonamassa's Telecaster must have been messed with at a later date because that is a PAF humbucker. That's a Gibson humbucker. And they weren't in Les Pauls, which is where they were first put in, for several years. I think it was a 58 or 57 Les Pauls when they started putting the humbuckers in. Again, that's a vague recollection. Someone will know the exact dates better than me. But it looks like 100... 100 of these are being made, all by master builder Greg Fessler. How's this one guy making 100 of these? I know luthiers, and they'll take a week on a single guitar. And that's a master builder. So either he's got some shortcuts, or I don't know, or he's got helpers, or
Else.
yeah. I mean, why does the article say handmade in air quotes? Although it does say the entire production run's going to take about 3 years to complete. Which, okay, all right. I'll give you that. If it took a week
But it
to
is in
build...
air quotes, like you say. Or not air quotes, it's in quotations, yeah.
Yeah.
Handmade.
But then vintage, I mean, I say vintage, but vintage Fender instruments at the time were not even really handmade. That was the whole point of Fender. The Fender versus Gibson argument at the time was that Gibson handmade everything like a Rolls Royce and Fender stamped them out like Fords. That was the point. That was what...
Again, I feel like the distressed part of it, if it's meant to look like another guitar, is probably got some form of process to it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, like, yeah, if it's just one person distressing it, each one's going to be quite different, and you could over distress a part by mistake. And
yeah, I suppose. I mean, they'll have a list of like big gouge here, dark gouge here. And if there's 100 of them to do, they will have a checklist and they'll have to go through it list by bit. But yeah, that's the real one that Joe Bonamassa is playing right there. And I mean, every guitar that Bonamassa has an incredible sound. He wouldn't buy them if they didn't.
Yeah.
But that's another thing. I'm on the fence about Bonamassa. I kind of like him because like he's got the attitude of, well, I've got these wonderful instruments. I'm going to take them on tour and actually play them because it doesn't matter how much I paid for them. They're instruments to be played and I'm going to play them. I don't think, yeah, great. Get it. Got you. But then I've been to see him live and after 20 minutes, I kind of fell asleep because it's like, it's the same thing again and again. And then it's like, yeah, really nice solo. Okay, you've been soloing for 5 minutes now, dude. Okay, it's been 9 minutes. All right, I'm going to take a nap. Wake me when you've finished.
Right.
And not to disparage him because everything he does is brilliant, but there's something about it that just I stopped being interested. I don't know what it was. Maybe he was having an off day. I don't know. But there you go. But then my dad's quite a big Bonamassa fan, and he's been to see him several times, and he said that some of the biggest shows he's seen him at have been dull as dishwater, and some of the smaller shows have been absolutely electric. So maybe it is just an on-day, off-day kind of thing. I don't know.
Maybe.
And then you get all the keyboard warriors who are like, oh, I don't like him because he's got all these wonderful guitars. It's like, yeah, you're just jealous.
Yeah.
He's doing something
Exactly
right
that.
to have earned the money to do this. And like he's one thing I do know about him is he has worked in guitar sales since being a kid. And like he used to work in his dad's guitar shop. He knows how to trade. He's probably earned half his money from buying a guitar for less than it's worth and selling it for more. So, I mean, if he can do that, great. So in that regard, he's absolutely at the top of his tree there, where he's he can now walk into some of the biggest guitar shops in the world and say, well, that $250,000 Les Paul, here's the money, buy. And then 6 months later, that same Les Paul's worth 300 grand. And then if he decides he doesn't like it anymore, he sells it and he's made 50 grand. You can't say fairer than that, really, can you, for savvy trading?
No, you can't.
Yeah.
You can't.
I mean, never mind NFTs and Bitcoin. If you can earn a Bitcoin by just having a guitar and then just selling it and playing it in the meantime, you're doing something right. Yes. So from Bonamassa to Behringer, it's time for Behringer Corner.
Ooh, Behringer Corner.
Yeah. So the Poly 8 Behringer teases an enhanced Korg Poly6 clone. And I wonder how Korg feel about this, because Korg are still around. Korg have lots of money and actually own lots of companies. Why are Korg not suing the pants off them?
I don't know.
Behringer are getting more and more brazen with their clones of instruments now.
And they've been caught out on some of them, haven't they?
They have, but they keep going on and on. So I wonder if they found loopholes or if they found that certain patents have expired, or I don't know how that works, especially in American or even Japanese laws, which is where a lot of Korg stuff would be made. I don't know if there's a limitation on ownership of things, but there must be some angle that they're using to be able to just say, right, we're just going to do it, and we know we're not going to be sued into oblivion. Or maybe Behringer feel like they're too big to fail at this point. I don't know. But yeah, the Korg Poly 6 was one of the big 80s synths, released in 81. As the name suggests, it was polyphonic, so it could do six notes at the same time, which might sound like oh big whoop, but before that, you have to understand, if you weren't around then or if you're not a synth nerd, synthesizers back in the day made one note at once. Because they had the hardware in that could generate maybe a few different oscillators that could make different pitches, but they all were usually triggered by the same keyboard, and you could press one note and that would send a voltage and that would make the sound. And a lot of modular synths, that's still how they work. But yeah, polyphonic synths, back in the very early 80s, Roland, Korg and Moog had the Polymoog, which was very expensive, and Oberheim ended up with the OB8 and OB6, which were, again, very expensive. Yeah, making them affordable, relatively affordable, was a big deal, and so a lot of guys had the Poly 6. And so, yeah, Behringer have decided, instead of putting original synth parts in, it says they've built it on their new ARM platform. So they've got an ARM chipset. So this is basically a Raspberry Pi that sounds like a Korg. It's got a little fan in there. It's got USB in and out. So yeah, it's kind of like an Android synth.
Okay.
I mean, I actually kind of like that idea if it's affordable, because
Oh yeah, if it's affordable, definitely.
yeah, I mean, one of the things that I've always liked about analog synths is not necessarily, oh, it sounds so analog, man. I mean, that's nice, but it's the access to all the controls. You see how they're all laid out. If you go, well, the attack is a little too much, you're not looking through menus, you look in front of you and you go, attack knob, tweak. And you can do it while you play, and you can go, yes, no, no, yes, yes, no, there it is, and move on. And yeah, with a lot of the, like, I've got synths on my iPad and on my iPhone that sound pretty cool, and the reason that they're a little frustrating sometimes is that it's not so easy to get hold of the controls. And so even if it was the same sound, because some of these apps sound pretty good, if I could have immediate access to all the controls of it, I'd be very happy. I mean, there's also the option of, having software instruments and having a good controller keyboard with all the knobs and twiddles and stuff. But that requires you having both of those things and having both of those things in a performance, which can complicate matters somewhat. As someone who is a professional engineer, I can tell you that can make things a little tricky if you're not absolutely on the ball.
Right.
Whereas if you've got someone who is a synth player and wants to be inspired, they probably want their hands on the stuff. Because then without communicating to anyone exactly what they're going for, they can go tweak, 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 boing. There you go. That sound. Yeah. Another Anon says, wish they'd do an affordable monopoly. Well, maybe they will eventually. But yeah, it seems that Music Tribe are not scared of people suing them. Yeah. There's your chips. So very little inside, actually. But wow. That's your lot. That's the separate power supply, which is inside, which is a nice touch. I don't like having external power lumps on performance instruments, because you want to be able to turn up somewhere and just go. And if your cable breaks, find another cable. That's always useful to have. But yeah, useful. And there's no news yet on the price of it. But if it's anything around the €500 mark, that'll be really good. So there you go. That was Zin News. Zin News. Now Now we'll throw to the chat if anybody's got any questions. Now's a good time. We're 24 minutes away from the Celestian video being finished. Oh my word!
Drum roll.
24-minute drum roll, everybody. I mean, I'm so glad it's almost over. But then I have to transcribe it for the subtitles. I might just not bother until another time. I've already done all the timestamps in a separate document, and I need to make a thumbnail for it, and then show it to all the important people and set a release date, and then go. And hopefully, if I set it to be released maybe 2 weeks from now, YouTube might have the 4K version ready. Processing time on a 6-hour 4K video, that's going to be intense.
Yeah. It's not going to be straight away, is it?
Nope. Mopog says, can you recommend an affordable analog synth? Mono or poly? Doesn't matter. Yeah, actually. Let's just go back to the browser window for a minute. Arturia. I really like Arturia's synth, the Brute series. And the Micro Freak is really cool. So, like, the Mini Brute 2 is really cool. That's a fully analog synth, and it's got full patch bay and stuff. It's €450, so it's not the cheapest, but for a proper analog synth that does real analog.
Yeah. If it's an analog synth, then
yeah. And all these little patch holes mean you can go from womp to wee, but just by sticking a couple of cables in.
You say you've got a lot of stuff inside there. You're buying a lot for your £400.
Yes. And it'll have...
it's not going to have 2 circuit boards like the other one.
Exactly, yeah. And Arturia as well. Even though it's analog, it will have a full sequencer in there as well, because Arturia are really good at that. So you'll be able to do like an 8 or 16 note loop where it'll go and something that you play in, and then you can take your hands off the keyboard and then start tweaking with the sounds. And that's a really inspiring way to work. They do have smaller, cheaper ones as well, but I do find like the Micro Brute that you might find as you get really small, that it's a little kind of like, it's like, it's the old Zoolander thing of, is this a school for ants? It's just a little too small for me, but don't know where the sound, come on, brain. There are words in there. I don't know what the price is for that one, but it is less. And yeah, there's if you want to go big, there's the Poly Brute. This is a serious monster. That's morphing analog polysynth. That's €2,500 though. So that's the beast. Oh, it's on the conclusion and it's going down faster. The Celestian render says 20 minutes, but it's probably more like 10. Mopok says, yeah, cool. Any thoughts on the Micro Freak? This one, the Micro Freak, $299. That's a different beast. If you want that kind of thing, it's a bit more of an idea scratch pad to me than the Mini Brute, which is much more versatile. I mean, you can see this looks like a really weird keyboard. It's got like electrostatic keys. It's not proper keys. It's a weird kind of in between. Yeah, it's really small and weird. And if you like small and weird, it might work for you. Small and weird. I mean, again, typical Arturia. It's got all the proper analog CV and gate outs and clock in and MIDI in and out and all that kind of stuff, so you can chain it up to other synths as well, and you can have this trigger different synths as it makes its own sound as well, And because it's all voltages, it's all in real time. So you can hook up 2 or 4 or 8 or a million analog synths, and they'll all play like a perfect choir, which is a bizarre experience. Yeah. Yeah. But if that's what you want, if you want weird, you go for weird. So there you go. Yes. Aceman says, I'll believe the Celestian video's done when I'll see it online. Yes, well, it does need converting down now to H.264 or H.265 because as it stands, it's about 1 terabyte. And the maximum YouTube upload is 128 gigabytes. So even if I had all the bandwidth in the world, YouTube would still say no. Like, yeah, no. So there you go. But that should be an overnight job, and that should be a very easy job compared to actually doing the rendering, the premiere thing of the video. So, yeah, that's something that can happen over the next couple of hours as I get round to the thing that I've been meaning to do. So, huge apologies to everybody who listens to the podcast on iTunes or Spotify. I've not quite been keeping up with uploading the MP3s there, I don't think. I'll check that. But I think I'm behind a little, so I'll be doing that. So there'll be a big podcast dump later this evening. Aceman says, Handbrake for the win. No. Fun fact, Handbrake doesn't do 4K. I found that out recently. No, I found that out recently, and I was just like jaw on the floor, like, wait a minute. Unless it's there in some absolutely cutting-edge version.
You can transfer from 4K, though.
Yes. It'll do 4K input.
So I've done that recently. Yeah.
But as far as I can tell, it doesn't have the ability to do 4K output. Doesn't have presets for it. Doesn't have a way. It literally stops you going above 1080 in terms of the height of the video. Handbrake.fr. Unless that, like I say, it's on version 1.3.3. So unless that's going, I found this as a problem 6 months ago, 12 months ago, when I was archiving all of my old footage that was 4K footage. It wouldn't let me do 4K through Handbrake. Eventually I just relented and said, fine, whatever, because it was just backing up old videos that I'm never actually going to use the source footage for again, but sentimental, I guess. I remember saying about that on the podcast when I did it, that I went down from something like 2 full hard drives to something like 8 terabytes of footage, down to like, 500 gig or something stupid. And yeah, that was a big jump. But yeah, I've also learned my lesson about filming on the GH5S in its own H.265 mode. Doesn't grade very well. Even though it's 72 megabit, it doesn't grade particularly well. That I've got kind of colours where I can see the low bit rate on particular colours. Very strange. I was considering getting a Blackmagic Pocket Micro 4K recently because I've been working on some footage recently that's off one of those and it is jaw-dropping. The Blackmagic Raw at 8:1 isn't actually that big a set of files and it's sharp as you like. Well impressed. Yeah. So I'm thinking about it, but then it's all about justifying the cost because there will be a lot of applications where having a camera that can do small files is very useful. Because if I've got a 256 gig card and I can either get 1 hour on it or 8 hours on it, depending on what I'm doing, that's not a small difference.
No.
But if it's the difference between something that looks really good and something that is ridiculous, then But honestly, once this whole thing is up on YouTube, no one's going to tell the difference anyway, so there you go. But yeah, any more questions in the chat? If not, that is our time to disappear until next week. I will be live again on Saturday doing another stream for our Epic Metal. I did one last night and it went incredibly well. I changed all my mix settings around a little bit now that I'm on a new computer. And even though it doesn't sound any different, I could hear different things. I think I was just in a good frame of mind. It was weird. The mix that I did last night came out really good. Like I listened to it today and I was happy with it. That good, you know. For an engineer, that is a rare thing. But yeah, there you go. So yes, thank you everybody for tuning in. I have been Adam Steele as always, and joining me as always has been Mr. Liam Wright. Thank you for...
Bye everybody.
Bye. Thanks everybody, and we'll see you next week. Same time, same channel. Goodbye. Hey everyone, that might be the end of the video, but if you fancy carrying on this conversation, we have a Discord server. Link is in the description. We're also on Patreon, which is something you can really help us with. We also are on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter at Hop Hole Studios.